Okay, hello guys. I chose the Taking Advantage of Everyday Activities to Practice Math Every Day um, article from our website, and this is in the early childhood corner. So I'm a preschool teacher. That's kind of one of my areas, and so 3 to 5 year olds. And one of my favorite quotes is because children learn through exploring their world. Everyday activities are natural vehicles for developing mathematical thinking. So anytime that a child is doing a daily routine, maybe it's brushing their teeth, tying their shoes, putting shoes on, how many feet do you have? One, two. Then you can incorporate that into their everyday routines. And I think that's something we forget as a society. We're not as good at maybe putting math into our everyday thinking as we might be literacy. I know it's easier sometimes to point out letter names or sounds as we're driving in the car, but counting or thinking mathematical isn't something that comes naturally for a lot of us as parents or caregivers. So I think it's important to show parents, caregivers, and other adults that work with children to just know that you can practice everyday activities in their lives. So that's something that kind of gives us the introduction to the article. Skip counting is something that I really enjoyed learning about. It's not something that I thought preschoolers could do, but skip counting can provide opportunities for kids to talk about that patterning and learning patterns. So to keep the meaning in skip counting, one of the things that I actually already incorporated in my classroom that I hadn't really thought about being as beneficial for kiddos as this article says it is, but when the kids greet each other, I do make a tally. So we've got one little guy that will go around and greet all of his friends, and as he's greeting, I count. We make sure everybody's here for the day, and we talk about who isn't, so we kind of do some adding and subtracting that way. I make tallies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when we're done, they know there's a group of 5, and then we say 5, 10, 15, and so on, and how many are here. So that helps them learn to count by fives, and that they can also stop at a 5 and keep adding 1. So we might say 15, 16, 17, and do it that way. And observing patterns in reading was something that I had not thought about before. That's new from the article. So again, most of us read to our children at night or read to our preschoolers or kindergartners in school. So talking about the page numbers during that story time is really something that might be beneficial for kids, so they can see in a different way. It talks about visually seeing numbers in a different way. So a lot of our books don't start with number 1 necessarily always, which I've always thought was kind of silly, but they start with page 2 or page 3 or wherever it is, and of course the title page maybe is page 1. So you'd say, oh, they didn't number this page, so we actually are starting with 2, and that not everything starts with number 1, or they would notice that maybe a page is missing. So I liked that part of the article too. And the last thing is just even and odd numbers. That's not something that I really intentionally have taught before, but something that is a part of our GOLD assessment and our early learning guidelines. So learning even and odd numbers, and I thought this was kind of fun for little kids. 1, saying 1 softly, 2, 3, 4, and teaching them that way that there are different ways to count, and giving them even and odd number representation. Counting by fives, talking about patterns with them, and counting by fives again. So once again, there's just those patterns in there. So you might not necessarily be talking about, hey, let's count by fives and just continue to count by fives, but show them a pattern of 5, 0, 5, 0, or show them the pattern of 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And this, I kind of have to laugh at myself a little bit because that's not something as an adult I even noticed or thought about. When I was in school, you just learned it and you knew it and you memorized it, or you didn't. And so I think that's a really great way to teach littles how to do this, and then hopefully will stick within their memory a little bit longer too by having a process. So I really enjoyed this article. The last thing, it kind of goes on to continue to talk about numbers, but calendar here is something that I really enjoyed learning about because I do a linear calendar. School's out, it's Friday, yay. So many calendars kind of come in that 2-dimensional, and you've got to think here like it's graphed, and so that's hard for kids to visualize and see. And so it does talk about how great calendars are and how you can incorporate those into your day. Here's what I do, and this is why. So when you get down here, it says this movement may seem unnatural because it's in contrast with the reading motion. So when they're little, like 3 to 5 year olds, and I've got some kiddos in here that also have developmental delays and really need those visual schedules to be pretty simple. So we do a linear calendar, and we've got 1, to 31, all in one big line in the front of our room. And so those important dates can be marked, and we might have a visual above it. So down here it says you can mark important days, you can put a sticker or whatever. So we do that above our number. And then I've got Sunday through Monday, and I just move Sunday as I need to because, oh, that day was Friday. And then when we count backwards, we're talking about counting backwards. How many days ago was that? How many days will it be when this happens? They can just use that number line and get used to using a number line. So 0, you know, we weren't in school then. That month didn't start on 0, and we just count backwards and forwards. They get experience using that number line, which I really like. I do not talk about weather a whole lot in my room, hot, cold, whatever. Sometimes when the weather's really, really cold, I will mention the temperature just because then we have a graph that does tell us, oh, you know what, over here it's too cold to go outside. That wouldn't be safe. So then we would go down to the gym that day. So that might be an only time that I would really talk about weather with my little ones. Of course, in kindergarten, you would talk about that a little bit more. Maybe you could graph it and talk about how many days was it cold and how many days was it warm. So those are always good things, but nothing new really there. And then lunch money, we don't incorporate either. So anyway, that's kind of what I learned from the article. I really enjoyed it. It works right in with my number sense of projects, and that's my target topic is number sense, and then also just the age group of early learners, preschool kiddos, and kindergartners. And I also really like just some of the strategies that it came up with that you can share with parents and colleagues in how to better incorporate math into our world. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned a little bit about it. Thanks.